Hello everyone. Women never forget a man who does these things. There is a man she met about 3 years ago. They never officially dated. Maybe they spoke for a few weeks, perhaps even less than that. Yet somehow, even now, he still appears in her mind from time to time. Not in an obsessive way, not with longing or regret. It's subtler than that. It's more like a quiet memory that resurfaces without warning. Maybe on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Maybe when she's spending time with someone else and everything in her life feels perfectly fine. And suddenly, for no clear reason, she remembers him. And she can't quite explain why. What makes this even more interesting is that he wasn't the most attractive man she had ever met. He wasn't the wealthiest either. He didn't try especially hard to impress her. In fact, if anything, he seemed like he wasn't trying at all. And that's the part she struggles to understand. Because most men put enormous effort into being remembered. They try to stand out, to impress, to prove something. Yet despite all that effort, many of them are forgotten within weeks. But this man was different. He did something quietly, something subtle, something that worked at a level most men never even consider. Today, I want to explore what he actually did, not the surface behaviors that people usually talk about, but the deeper psychological and emotional dynamics happening underneath, the level where impressions are truly formed. Because once you understand this, the way you think about attraction will never be the same again. And just to be clear, this video is not about tricks. It's not about clever lines, message templates, or techniques that supposedly work every time. If that's what you're looking for, this probably isn't the video for you. Instead, what we're going to talk about is rooted in psychology, specifically, how emotional memory works and why certain people leave a lasting imprint on others. Research and real-life experience both point to the same surprising conclusion. The men who leave the deepest impressions on women are rarely the ones doing the most. Instead, they're the ones doing something very specific, something that operates beneath conscious strategy. Today, we'll break this down into 3 psychological principles. Each one builds on the previous one. And the third principle, in particular, may challenge something many men have believed their entire lives. Something they thought was helping them, when in reality, it might actually be working against them. So stay with me through all 3 ideas, because the full picture only becomes clear when you see how they fit together. First, let's talk about what most men typically do. When a man becomes interested in a woman, he often shifts into what you might call performance mode. He becomes funnier than usual, more attentive, more eager to please. He carefully chooses his words. He pays attention to how he appears around her. He curates his behavior. And to be fair, none of these things are inherently wrong. The real issue lies in the motivation behind them. Because when someone is performing, even subtly, the other person can feel it. She might not consciously recognize it, but somewhere in her nervous system something registers. This man is trying to be something for me, and that creates a particular dynamic. Suddenly, she becomes the evaluator, the one judging the performance, and you become the person auditioning for approval. Your value becomes conditional, constantly subject to evaluation. One wrong step, one awkward moment, one bad day, and the impression can shift. Here's the painful irony. The harder you try to perform, the less memorable you often become. Why? Because she has seen performances before. She has seen versions of men who polish themselves, smooth out their rough edges, and optimize their personalities for approval. But what she rarely encounters, what people deeply crave, is something authentic, something that exists independently of her validation, something real. Think about your own experiences for a moment. When you've tried very hard to impress someone, did it actually create a lasting impression? Not just in the moment, but over time. Did it grow into something deeper? Or did the connection slowly fade once the performance ended? There's a reason for that, and it has everything to do with how emotional memory functions. Here's what many people misunderstand. Women don't remember men primarily through logical analysis. They don't sit down and mentally calculate your qualities, your career, your looks, your humor, and combine them into a score. What they remember is how they felt in your presence. More specifically, they remember moments that were emotionally unexpected, moments that broke the usual pattern, moments that surprised them in some subtle way. Not because you were showing off, but because you were simply being yourself in a way that felt genuine and unforced. That's where real impressions begin to form. So let's talk about the 3 psychological triggers behind this. The first trigger is this: he made her feel seen, not studied. There is a meaningful difference between observing someone and truly seeing them. Most men watch women. They listen to what she says, analyze it, and respond accordingly. That's normal conversation. But unforgettable men go deeper than that. They notice the things that weren't said. They catch the brief pause before an answer. They remember a small detail she mentioned weeks earlier and bring it up naturally, not to show off their memory, but simply because they genuinely remembered. Psychologically, this connects to something researchers call the felt sense of significance. Human beings have a deep, almost primal need to feel that they matter, that they are not interchangeable, that someone sees them as a unique individual rather than just another role or category. When someone fulfills this need naturally without trying to, it leaves a powerful emotional imprint. Unfortunately, many men confuse attention with genuine interest. Giving someone lots of attention is not the same as truly seeing them. Generic compliments like "you're beautiful" or "you're smart" feel pleasant, but they rarely go very deep. What truly resonates is specificity. For example, noticing when her energy shifts during a conversation, remembering something meaningful she once shared, acknowledging a subtle change in her tone. These moments communicate something far more powerful than flattery. They communicate presence. And in a world where most people are waiting for their turn to speak rather than truly listening, genuine curiosity becomes rare, and rare experiences are rarely forgotten. The second trigger is this: he created emotional safety without losing himself. This concept is often misunderstood. Emotional safety is one of the most powerful forces in human connection, yet is rarely discussed in conversations about attraction. People talk about confidence, status, humor, or appearance. But one of the deepest feelings a woman can experience with a man is the sense that she can relax around him, that she doesn't have to perform, she doesn't have to manage his emotions or carefully filter herself. She can simply breathe. However, emotional safety doesn't come from being overly accommodating or constantly agreeing. A man who has no opinions of his own, who constantly reshapes himself to match someone else's preferences, doesn't create safety. He creates uncertainty. People actually feel more secure around individuals who possess a stable sense of self, people who know what they believe, who can disagree calmly, and who remain grounded even when challenged. The truly memorable man is someone who can sit with emotional complexity without trying to fix everything. He doesn't panic when emotions appear. He doesn't withdraw. He doesn't treat her feelings like a puzzle that needs immediate solving. He simply remains present. And that kind of steady presence is rare. When someone experiences it even once, it leaves a lasting impression. The third and final trigger is perhaps the most important. He cared more about who he was than what she thought of him. Many men, consciously or unconsciously, make a woman's opinion the center of their emotional world. They constantly ask themselves questions like, did she like that message? Should I reply now or later? Did I say the wrong thing? And that's understandable. When you're attracted to someone, you naturally become sensitive to how they perceive you. Many men, consciously or unconsciously, make a woman's opinion the center of their emotional world. They constantly ask themselves questions like, did she like that message? Should I reply now or later? Did I say the wrong thing? And that's understandable. When you're attracted to someone, you naturally become sensitive to how they perceive you. Now compare that with someone who is genuinely grounded in himself, a man who has his own goals, friendships, and direction in life. A man whose identity doesn't depend on whether one particular connection succeeds or fails. When such a man expresses interest, it feels different. Because his interest isn't coming from need, it's coming from choice. And the experience of being chosen by someone who doesn't need to choose anyone is powerful. That's the kind of presence people remember, not the perfect words, not the impressive gestures, but the feeling of being around someone who was quietly whole within himself. In the end, the men who remain unforgettable are not the ones who tried the hardest to impress. They are the ones who showed up authentically curious, grounded, and complete. They didn't perform, they simply existed as themselves, and in doing so, they allowed the other person to do the same. That's the kind of impression that doesn't fade. Because what you leave behind when you live this way isn't an image, it's a feeling, and real feelings have a way of staying with people long after the moment has passed.